A lot of people ask why USA uses standard and not metric. And the answer is actually something no one talks about. The answer is our government did pass a bill once to become metric. And at that point in time, we had to go to France and have them show us how to use it and, validate our weighing system because they were in control and they knew what they were doing. And so they passed that bill, but we didn't actually go there because we were at war with France. So we didn't deal with that. And that was a long time ago. That was like some of the original people who were in the government had ratified that. Is that the right word? Ratified? Passed that bill. And it's important to change all this stuff to save space, to stop confusion, and save resources and money. When you have to have like a standard wrench set and a metric wrench set, it's a waste of time and money. When the store has standard and metric wrenches, it's so much more space. When Amazon has to have twice as much space for the same, for wrenches than it would if everything was standardized, it's a waste of money. And it's also confusion. I believe at the end of the day, intelligence is everything. So if you raise the intelligence, then everything else will raise up beyond it. A lot of people agree with that, like famous people, philosophers, and leaders, like Marcus Aurelius and Aurelius, is that how it's pronounced, and others, will say that knowledge is worth more than gold. And it is. You can raise the standard from the bottom if everything's just heightened. That's what Christianity did with literacy. They ushered literacy into standardized. And I mean, could you imagine, like, if we didn't have literacy, we wouldn't have anything. I'm not saying schools are good. Like, I could have just been like, oh, we wouldn't have schools. It's like, but we wouldn't be able to read these books on how to fix cars if we didn't know how to read, right? So just raising that level from the slaves who just worked on stone, building pyramids, to slaves who can read and learn a whole bunch of stuff that raised the entire level of society. Just raising that one, low bar. Like today we would look at that like a low bar, like who can't read? Like no one, unless you're dyslexic. And then if you're dyslexic, you probably just need to go like south of the equator, learn some Hebrew or something where they write backwards and you read it backwards. I don't even think dyslexic is a problem. I think these are probably people who have the other thing. It's not a problem. They just don't read the way we do. They read the way south of the equator reads in certain places. Anyways, changing these things, changing little minor things in the language, in the mass system will reduce waste so much. Of course, space is taken by having two of every wrench, and then two of every socket, and blah, blah, blah. And then every book has to specify standard or metric. So every time those words are written like thousands of times a day, and those words would be completely removed, and you wouldn't have that ink wasted, you wouldn't have that paper space wasted. And when you do that, like just one thing will significantly reduce data storage, ink waste, and paper waste. But there's so many little things you can do there which will add up even more. Like we're talking about one of these things, like changing a date to military time, standardizing military time. When you fill out forms, it can reduce the amount of ink used, and imagine how many times a day the date is written, and you reduce it by a couple figures, and you standardize it so it's not confusing. Again, I think intelligence and confusion are probably the things that will lift up society more than wasting paper and ink. But people are concerned more with wasting paper and ink than they are in intelligence and not being confused. But it does both. It probably does more than that. And you standardize all this stuff. Now, one thing we shouldn't standardize, one thing we should switch is Fahrenheit to Celsius. Because every time I read Celsius is very inaccurate. It's like one day in winter it's like 20 degrees, and then one day in summer it's like 30 degrees, and it's like, there's no difference. Like, there's only 10 numbers difference, and it's like one is freezing, one is hot, something like that. Fahrenheit itself. Now you could add decimals. Maybe we could add decimals to the Celsius, but Fahrenheit at this point in time is a better measurement. It's a more accurate measurement. And I mean, if you're a scientist, you might want more than Fahrenheit. You might want more than 72 degrees or 71 or 70. You might want, who knows if that actually matters in science, changing a degree by like half or a quarter or something like that, because things happen in science when we change temperature. Water changes to ice, or it changes to vapor, to mist, according to temperature, and then things are forged according to different temperatures. Things are melted, which forging is kind of like melting and reshaping. And so that's the reason why things aren't all metric, was because we passed that law. We were supposed to do that. And then we were at war with France, and for some reason no one ever went back when we were no longer at war with them, or we just didn't re-adopt it, because it's like, what do we need France for now? I'm pretty sure we can understand metric at this point. And standardizing all that stuff saves so much space and reduce so much waste. And there's so many things that can be changed that are small things that no one even really notices or cares about, that especially when it adds up, it becomes like such a significant thing. And Elon Musk, if you want to send me the $1 million prize for the best carbon reduction plan, you can go ahead and do that, because I have all those plans. I've got just so many of them. You add all this stuff up, and some of it's so simple too. I guess rebuilding computers to be military time, and rebuilding electronics to all be military time. And it's standardized military time at that too. We should probably have a standardized military time at that, where there isn't time zones. The time zones are kind of ancient, and they're like the argument. There is no argument really to keep the time zones. You get rid of that. That's another thing where there's reduction in waste. We don't. Every device, every TV show, every paper written won't say Eastern or Pacific or global or whatever. It will just have the standardized time, and then massive reduction in waste. Each of these little things.